Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. It's the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. And you can check out all of our terrific podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Friday, January 17th. I'm still struggling with the fact that we're halfway through January. My partner, as you know, is Dr. Orphe Divounguy. He's a PhD economist and, as I like to say, an all-around good guy. So, Dr. O, we're taping this on Friday. I'm not sure what day this is going to air next week, but it'll probably, of course, every Monday, so on Inauguration Day, our episode on the week ahead will air. This will likely air after the inauguration. Donald Trump will be, installed as our 47th president in the traditional ceremony in Washington D.C. on Martin Luther King Day, January 20th. Much is made of the first 100 days of any administration. This was an election of opposites in terms of policy and vision for the future. One of the things I think that stands out, above all else in an election such as the one that we have, was the focus on the economy. So in the first 100 days, there's often a lot that a president attempts to get done in a new administration. Economically, there are a lot of things that are on the punch list for President Trump. Certainly, the DOGE initiative, which is going to be run by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, that they're targeting $500 billion in cuts from the federal government. President Trump has said that tariffs are going to be a significant part of the way that he looks at what's going on. He had, in the last week or so, talked about a new governmental agency called the External Revenue Service. So instead of the Internal Revenue Service, the External Revenue Service. So there's and then of course there's the regulatory, punch list that he has, which is pretty long. It's a lot. I mean, could you help us to make sense of the priorities here and what we might come to expect to see in these next 100 days?
I think it's funny. I really think it's funny. There was a time where I used to, when I was a little bit younger, where I used to think less is more. And that, I probably didn't want my government to do too much. Right. And I still feel that way. I think less is more. We saw and I'm not going to speak into various policies and details. I just thought I'm just reading off the headlines. The dojo, whatever it's called, Doge,
Doge, DOGE. Yep,
the Doge will probably not find $2 trillion in federal budget cuts.
Well, they're only aiming for 500 billion. So if they could get to 500 billion, that they would consider that to be successful. And I mean, for perspective, I don't have the 2025 budget in front of me, but the 2024 U.S. federal budget. So July 23rd through June of this past year, right? 2024, we spent $6.752 trillion and had revenues of $4.919 trillion. So we had a deficit of $1.833 trillion.
Yes.
In the last full completed year.
And that has grown from 1.7 trillion in 2023. I mean, it keeps growing. So I mean, I don't know I don't even know that we'll get the 500 billion that he's talking about. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. All I know is that something must be done because it's keeping pressure on interest rates. It's generating a ton of market uncertainty. The term premium has risen. Investors are worried, and that's why we saw interest rates increase so much in the past month and a half, month or so. So I think the deficit is definitely going to have to be the priority, but I don't know that that's going to be that Doge is going to be able to do much about it. I know we got entitlement spending being a big part of our problem, and no one's touching that. No one's even talking about it. So, yeah. So I'm not as optimistic. I think probably on the deregulation front, you look at home builders. Home builders are really optimistic about that. So on the deregulation front, there might be some good stuff there. But ultimately, I'm worried about this external revenue service or whatever it's called. I'm worried about another tax increase. And so, but yeah, ultimately, I don't know if we need another revenue service, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm very skeptical about the tariff agenda. There was a really nice article um, recently. I can't remember which newspaper about the guy in charge of the tariffs under I think it's going to be perhaps the head of the Council of Economic Advisors. I think there we go. Wall Street Journal article uh, about an economist. I think a Harvard-educated economist that will probably join. He was defending the Trump tariffs. Probably joined the administration. And really, I mean, I read the article published in the Wall Street Journal, and what I find is a ton of inconsistencies and just a bunch of assumptions that are made that seem so implausible. Um, and so I really doubt that this new experiment would pay off in the way that we want it to. But again, that's just my opinion. So I am worried. I think ultimately, if the new administration does absolutely nothing but the deregulation, I think people will be very happy with that result. Doing too much might not be the way to go. But again, not that's just my opinion. Don't take me at my word here. I'm willing to take it to look at it and observe from the outside.
And I think that's a healthy perspective.
I
I
am
mean,
an
I
outside
think there are a
observer.
lot of people that are going into this presidency, and just a couple things. Let me finish that thought. There are a lot of people going into this presidency waiting for some sort of magic to happen. This is going to take a lot of work. The U.S. economy is still not fully recovered from COVID and the way that we spent money, and the way that we have funded wars in Ukraine, and we've been sending money out all over the world to do specific things. It'll be very interesting to see when the levers are pulled back in a different direction, and if the focus is actually placed on growth and infrastructure here in the United States, what that looks like to us and what it looks like to the rest of the world.
Well, I mean, look,
I'm eager to see what that looks like,
I tell you what,
but I'm not going to pretend that I know what that looks like.
No, but look, I wonder if we need more growth. I mean, think about it. GDP growth is 3%. Productivity growth is the highest it's been in a long time. The labor market's very solid. Inflation's at 3%, right? Still. And maybe that's a bit of the negative. But we're at full employment. So I don't know if we actually need more growth.
But the US economy has always been about growth.
Well,
the business of America is business.
You know, My concern.
Growing is what we do here, Dr.
My
Lowe.
concern is that we could potentially try to overheat the economy again. And so, I would say, look, we're in good shape. Things are slowing, but they're still in very good shape. The slowdown might have even kind of stopped to some extent, right? They're not slowing as fast as they were. So if you're in a good place, do nothing, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. Don't try to fix something that's not broken. Is my right? And there are things that are broken on the regulatory side, right? We know, for example, that across the country, we talked about it on our show multiple times. We can't even build enough housing to go around for everyone.
That's right.
Right? So we know there are things.
And we've talked about why that is.
Right?
And we've talked about why that is.
Regulatory constraints.
That's right.
Are the biggest problem in this country. And so there are things.
And a fair amount of sprinkling of NIMBYism. Doo-doo-doo.
Yes. So we know what the problem is. We know where, and so we know what we need to fix. Everything else,
All right. Well, you're going to have 4 years to process what's going on. The first 100 days are always interesting. I appreciate your thoughts as always. I'm gonna bring us to a close here because we have 4 years to talk about what's going on. And in the first 100 days, we could check with our producer Eliana, but I'm pretty sure that there are several weeks inside of a 100-day period, so we can just check in.
It's going to be
one thing I'm going to do before I go. I want to let you know I am going to do an inventory this weekend, and I am going to, on a consumer price level, I am going to make a baseline list of what all of my personal consumer staples at my grocery store that I shop every week. I'm going to make a baseline list of those, and I'm just going to kind of hold them off, and every so often we'll check it. Okay? That's what I'm going to do.
I think what people want today is not low inflation. What they want is prices to actually fall.
And we don't think that that's going to happen. We don't
think it's healthy.
Right. We don't think it's healthy. Yeah. But let's just see what actually happens to prices over time. So let's call it good. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.